Greetings, students. Welcome to week 5. I hope you enjoyed our week off with our gold stories and searching for gold and lost treasure, because now we're getting back into the less savory side of history. So this week we have the slave trade coming up. That's what we're learning about this week. So we're going to understand why this started and what kept it going for so long. We're going to take a look at the economic and the cultural exchange that occurred here, what was really going on with money changing hands and people trying to become rich and all of that. And we're going to try to define and understand the African diaspora as a result of this trade. So that's what we have going on this week. Should be interesting. So, couple of things to keep in mind. Next week is your midterm. Yep, your midterm. There will be videos up about how to study, what to study, all of those things. Also, I am not mean. I will give you less work next week to do because you will have a midterm. But heads up that you do have a midterm coming up. If you want to get started studying for your midterm, which is always a good idea, I would highly recommend keeping an eye on your quizzes. The information in the quizzes is usually a pretty good indication of things I'm going to ask about on exams. So I would keep an eye on the quizzes. I would keep an eye on your keywords and concepts. I do not make PowerPoint videos for my own health, guys. Those are for a purpose, so I would keep an eye on those as well. And any notes that you've taken from our documentaries or our reading, you might want to review those as well. So we will have midterm study guide review stuff in the next week, but I did just want to give you a heads up that is coming up. Additionally, your signature assignment is due in 3 weeks. The stuff is going to be up by the time most of you are getting to this week. So go down there and take a look at it. It should be down there. Do you see it? It's down there. It should be. And let me know if you have any questions about that. All right. So what do you need to do this week? Well, first, watch your weekly overview video with my floating head, which is everybody's favorite. Then we have 3, count them, 3 keywords and concepts videos this week. So go ahead and watch those. And then this week we're doing something a little different. So because it's a little depressing, your secondary source this year or this week is actually a documentary. It's not reading. And since counterintuitively we start with our secondary sources to help us understand our primary sources, we're going to start with our documentaries this week. So I'm going to want you to watch the introduction to our first one, which is entitled Slavery and Suffering. It's actually part of a History of Africa series that was really well done. And then you can go ahead and watch that. I think that one's 45 minutes. And then after that, we have a second documentary about the last years of the Atlantic slave trade. Now, it's literally about the last years of the Atlantic slave trade. And that's partially because we have records about it, which is helpful. So it's easier for us to recreate this narrative from later in the slave trade. But it doesn't matter that it's from later in the slave trade because all the relevant information stays the same. They had just kind of honed this by the time we get to 1825 so that they really had a system in place. All right, so after you watch our 2 documentaries, I think the second documentary is about an hour. After you watch the second documentary, we have about 11 pages of primary source material to read this week from Mr. Equiano, possibly one of the most famous people ever to have been enslaved, or at least one of the early ones. That was published in 1789 in Europe. Yep, a book written by a formerly enslaved person in 1789. In the world, neat. So I'm going to have you guys read his account of being abducted in Africa, sold several times in Africa, and the Middle Passage. It's one of the few firsthand accounts of the Middle Passage that we have. So you guys are going to be reading that. And then afterwards, as usual, go ahead and take your quiz and then pop into the slave trade discussion board. Now, I designed this unit around 2 things. 1, always to help with your signature assignment, which is due in 3 weeks, which is about slavery and the end of slavery. So this is kind of designed to help you start doing that. The other thing that we always want to think about when we're looking at these people and we're looking at these terrible stories, how did people survive? How did people keep their culture? How do people keep their dignity? Any sense of self, right? So as you're completing the unit this week, think about that. Think about how you would keep body and soul together in this instance. Some of you may have had ancestors who went through this. Some of you did not. So just think about it, okay? And we'll talk about it in the discussion post. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.